So our next speaker is Hediana Utarti. She is the Anti-Trafficking Program Coordinator and Community Advocate for the Asian Women's Shelter. She produces trainings in social justice cases related to domestic violence, trafficking, and anti-homophobia. So, come on up, Hediana.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hediana. It's like, hey, Diana. So before I share my work with you, I want to show a 2-minute video that actually done by one of our survivors. She does not want to be meeting people, but she wants her story to be shared to that. So you probably have heard this kind of stories before, and I think, you know, part of the challenge of my work is because individual cases like this, you know, this case was in a suburb of San Francisco, I think in Foster City or Union City or something like that. It is actually harder to find because it's one person in one big house somewhere in the suburb. And so what's interesting about this case, her name is I.M., is that she was helped by a neighbor. And then the neighbor took her to Daly City, and then the neighbor actually made her work. So she was actually re-trafficked. And although the neighbor found a lawyer for her, so the lawyer actually found us and said, can you take her out and bring her to the shelter? And that's when the whole thing. So it is so easy actually to be helped and re-trafficked, you know. I want to say that there was some part that was not clear. So she was living in near the garage, and the situation was 3 years long. She is originally from Indonesia, where I come from, and that's why she ended up to be my client, because I spoke her language. So what's interesting, you know, in her case also is that when she was brought to the U.S. from Hong Kong. So she was recruited in a legal workers recruitment agent, something like that, back in Indonesia, brought into Hong Kong and worked in Hong Kong for 2-3 years, and everything was good according to her. And then brought to the U.S., and then something changed. So if people often ask, why do people do this to each other? I don't know, you know? Because you have extra money, because you are this, who knows, who knows. So I'm just gonna talk to you actually today is what do we do at Asian Women's Shelter and with other organizations that's doing similar things. What do we do in our day-to-day work to support them so that they become human again and they become, you know, important community members. So just very quickly, human trafficking is a big deal. As you can see, according to the Polaris Project, in 2017, they received more than 26,000 calls. In San Francisco, we have more than 500 cases in 2017. This is basically what happened, and our client actually went through being recruited, being harbored, and manipulated into labor. A lot of our cases are mostly a mix between labor and sex trafficking, because when they are all alone in this place, and they usually locked in, they cannot leave the house. And some of the traffickers can be your own distant family. And there's a lot of sexual harassment and rape at the same time. So it is, for me, it's sex trafficking and labor trafficking all mixed up together. I want to say, though, that I.M. is doing well. This is a case about 10 years ago, and she is now the one of the head cook in one of the kitchen of one of the big tech company around here. So she is not far from here. She's doing well, and she actually manages her settlement money very well. She was able to actually get herself a small house in Emeryville area. So that's also another challenge is once they get a big settlement, how do you use it? Because some people who never had a lot of thousands, then they'll just buy expensive things and don't know what to do with that. Let's see. So these are, Sorry. These are a lot of barriers that my clients, are facing. Some of them don't speak English. Some of them are afraid of the authority. A lot of folks from another country are afraid to talk to anyone. They don't believe the police. They don't believe anyone. They are so afraid to speak to just anyone because they came from countries where the government is very oppressive and killing their own people. So why would they believe a police? In IM case, it was a little better for me because she spoke English and I was able to talk some more in Indonesian. So we actually built trust a little faster. Even though this is, these are a list of things that I have to deal with every day. They are fearful, they are distrustful. Sometimes they trust me, but they don't trust the lawyer. Sometimes they trust the lawyer, but don't trust me. And then sometimes when I work with somebody whom I don't speak their language, they don't trust their interpreter, but they trust me, and they're trying to tell me all kinds of things that I don't understand, and it's basically, it's a teamwork. We have to, like you said, we have to communicate and support the client slowly, together, all the time, so that we actually build trust and getting them somewhere. Withdrawal is a big thing. The first few days that I met them, or the first few days they came to the shelter, they don't want to talk to anyone. They don't trust anyone. Health issues is a possibility. Some people don't sleep. Some people refuse to sleep. Some people eat and cook and never stop cooking. And some people refuse to eat. So it's interesting. It's interesting. It's challenging. But once they went over the hump, it just feels you can see a flower is actually blooming, and that's why I stay in this job and I can't do anything else. Facing community scrutiny or gossip is another thing. Some of our clients actually would like to go to the church and just, starting a new life, because that's what we are trying to get them to do. But then people from her community or their community, men or women, they always ask, how did you get to the U.S.? What's your visa? Are you married? All kinds of questions. Small things that, like Leticia said, is not celebrating who you are, but questioning who you are, and they got scared. So some of my Korean-speaking clients pretending they're Japanese, so that they don't have to deal with other Korean people. It's interesting. It's interesting. So anyway, this is just to remind all of us that human trafficking, as well as domestic violence and sexual assault, basically what had happened to them is that, they were in a situation where they were under power and control, and their own power was taken away. So one thing that we do is what was said earlier is about empowerment, and one thing that we do is actually we tell them their options. These are your options. This is the kinds of thing we can do. This is the kinds of thing that I can do. But I cannot do that thing, I can do this thing, so they can make decision. Some of them might not want to work with us, want to work with another organization, and that's fine. But we want to provide them with as much information and education as possible. One thing that I want to highlight here is about culturally informed and culturally appropriate. A lot of the organization thought that culturally appropriate meaning you should have an interpreter and everything will be fine. And that sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't work. Because you speak the same language, they don't want to have anything to do with you. So just because I speak Indonesian, I don't assume they want to talk to me. And just because I speak Indonesian, I cannot assume that I know everything about that person, because we come from a different education, different year, different experiences. Somebody like me who speak English and have access to education and have some money, experience violence very different with somebody who was tricked to come here. Right? So that's one thing that we always try to remind folks. And these are three things, just to close my presentation, these are three 3 steps, if I may call it that way, on how we support clients. One is stabilizing, as people call it, or basically providing basic needs. Shelter is one thing, clothing, safety, healthcare access, and seeing an attorney. I actually forgotten to put food. How can I do that? So at Asian Women's Shelter, we're very serious about food. There are different kinds of rice because every culture have their own rice. Every culture have their own noodles. There's kosher food, there's halal food, there's this and that. And I did not quite understand that in the beginning, but now I can see that a little bit of comfort food actually help a survivor feel that they are human again. Because most of the time, food is denied. The food that they like is denied from them. So if you actually offer a food that's pretty close to what they are used to, at least it helped them to feel at home. After a month or so, we're usually getting ready to the taking off stage, looking for getting them to a job training or fine education if they want to, understand their rights when they're working, and then understand some financial management, and find a workplace that's safe also. Because there are situations where they fall into a workplace where they are re-exploited again. You all probably have heard about live-in nannies, live-in elder care and stuff. There are always slippery situations in there where possible exploitation happen again. I don't know if we want to call it human trafficking, but exploitative for sure. The hardest part is, of course, looking for safe and long-term affordable housing in San Francisco. So we are very lucky that we work very closely with several programs in San Francisco, including Brennan House and Clara House and stuff. And we also receive funding from the state to provide a subsidy for about 6 months. And that's really, really helpful. And finally, actually, this is the hardest part, is to support your clients to reintegrate into the community, building new friends, finding new relationship that is healthy, and knowing the neighborhood, the situation, so that they thrive. They're not surviving only, but they are thriving. So again, in this situation, we are dealing with another community scrutiny if they come from a small community. People will ask, who are you? How did you get your visa? All this conversation about T visa and U visa is like flying off the handle in the community sometimes. One thing that we try to work with them is think about who you want to be. Do you want to use your name? You want to come up with a new name? Do you want to come up with a new story, how you get here? Do you want to know people, and who do you want to know, and stuff like that. So the length of work that I have with my client is usually 6 months to a year until they feeling fully reintegrated into the community and not needing help on handling taxes and stuff, and then they're really, really, taking off. Essentially, I want to say that we cannot do this alone. I want to thank you, all of our colleagues in law enforcement, our attorneys. One of my support people here is Ms. Nancy O'Malley, always helping us out. So basically, and we need all of you to support a person to not survive, but to thrive and really taking off and be successful. I think I stop here for now. Thank you, everyone.